Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Torrance with SwordGuyBuilds.com. Today, I'm going to be walking you through the construction process for a 6-foot economy bullwhip. The Eco Bulls have a 16 plat overlay, no braided belly. It's built on a loose strand core. I'm really not going to get into a lot of the minutia or the nuance. It's just going to be the broad strokes so that you can see how they come together. So I have my booklet here with all my notes, all my strand lengths for this whip. The strand lengths depend heavily on the length of the whip, of course. So I'm not going to get too much into the nuance and the minutia of the actual lengths. What's important to know is there are essentially a total of 20, 24, depending on how you're counting, strands at the core of the whip. And I will show you a little bit of my mentality about all those strands. So first off, and I think this is very interesting, I have a 5-inch and a 9-inch strand. I don't factor these into the overall taper of the whip. I call these bolster strands. They just go here at the thong pointing end of the handle, just to make sure that with all the additional pressure that I'm applying in the braiding there, the diameter of the whip doesn't collapse. So these strands, the 5-inch and the 9-inch, they double up to be 4 strands that go out to 4 inches, staggered to 4 inches into the thong, and through those 4 inches, I am diminishing my braiding tension so that the diameter stays pretty uniform for the first few inches before I get into my main sequence braiding. After these 2 bolster strands, now all the rest of them will stagger out evenly to roughly to almost exactly the halfway point of the thong. And I do isolate the thong apart from the handle. You don't necessarily have to do that. If you took the overall length of the whip with the handle included and then tapered or staggered your strands evenly to center mass on that, basically you would have a little bit less mass in the first part of the whip, then the taper on the second half would be a little bit slower. So it all works, but I prefer to isolate the thong for these, especially just because nylon is so light. Even after it's been waxed, just helps you get a little bit more weight out in there. For the 6-foot, the way this works out, there are 20 total strands that play into the taper of the whip, and because the latter part of the whip will be filled out with the dropped strands, all of these strands are staggered out at even intervals. For the 6-foot, it's 1.5 inches between strands. I do like to roll these out with my hands, again, in the interest of having a very smooth finish on the handle. So there we go. This is the finished, essentially the finished belly of this whip. And you can see that these strands, the lighting is a little weird. You can see that these strands diminish very regularly down to, this is going to be the 40-inch mark in the whip right there. So now I'm going to cut the overlay strands. Before I move on, I'm also going to cut a 30-inch strand. This is going to be the fall. I just found that I really like 30 inches just as a blanket length for every economy model I offer, just because it leaves you a little bit of length in case you want to shorten it, or in case it deteriorates and snaps off over time or whatever. You still have a little bit of extra length. And when you taper down this fine anyway, you really have a lot of room to play with. So I'm just going to give each of these ends a really good melt, get them into a really solid bead. That'll help lock off the ends and keep them from fraying. And also, the way that I do the hitch on the Eco models, a large bead will also help me make the hitch a little bit more stable. Make sure it won't loosen or come undone through normal use. So I now have all of my overlay strands tied up on my hook by the filler strands, and I'm gonna just grab the entire bundle and slide it down to tease these core strands out. So this is something that I think is very efficient. I like to square start all of my nylon braiding, well, whenever possible, so that I can use the bites that form when you square start as anchor points for my hook. So I have this this rough lattice here, and I'm going to hang this over my hook like this, so that I can jump immediately into my braiding. Take our belly here, slide it up in there, and I'm going to immediately transition into a double diamond pattern. Let's see, last two would be like this. So I'm not going to go over any of the specific transitional steps or anything here, just because it is a little bit difficult to explain, but you will be able to see how it comes together. So at this stage, I am now starting to put on a very good amount of tension onto these strands, so that we have a very smooth handle, and so that it doesn't wiggle around or twist over time or with use. It'll also help give us a strong anchor for our heel foundation, so that also does not come loose or twist over time. So now that I'm at the end of the handle, I'm going to start transitioning into my herringbone pattern, so that we can start putting some real tension here on the transition. So this is just the main sequence braiding process, the process of braiding the overlay from the point where the tension starts to loosen up at the transition zone all the way to the fall hitch. The Eco Bowls are interesting in that the core only goes halfway. I have 3 drops from the start of the thong through to the end of the core, and that brings me to essentially 10 plait over 6 strands. So this is one of the trickier parts of the process, where we drop from a 4-strand herringbone to a, well, I mean, you could call it a 2-strand twist, you could call it a 3-strand twist, but basically, at this point, I need to thread 1 strand inside of another strand. And anybody who's done this knows that it is not easy. Very difficult to do efficiently just because of how your hands need to articulate. But basic idea is put this threaded needle on the end of one of the strands, hold the other 2 strands tight, sort of pass it off awkwardly between hands here. I don't know if you can see, it is tough to find a good angle. Force the needle in like that. Pull it taut, just like this. Space it the same way I've been spacing all the other drop points in the whip. Make sure this is tight. Tighten the other couple strands, then release the tension in it. There. So from here, I'll just be twisting these together, and then when I get to the end of this twist, we'll do the fall hitch. So now that I've got this ready, just take the fall, keep it pinched, bring this strand around the back. Little half hitch there. Reposition it, move on to the next strand. Tighten that down. Tighten that down. And now I'm going to take, it's a little tough to see, I'm going to take the fall, wrap it around here through its own loop. There, just like this, little loop. And then cinch it down real good. And this is why this little bead is important. There. So now we can see that the little bead is keeping it all from coming undone. If this weren't there, it wouldn't be able to hold that knot. So, final tightening. Just like that. So the overlay braiding is now finished, and we're just going to give it a quick roll, a good hard roll, to even out some of the tension and smooth the braiding. This part really doesn't have to take too long, but you do want to make sure that you're putting a very good amount of pressure on it. So now we'll be preparing the heel foundation, and to do that, all I'm going to do is cap off the heel. I think it's like a polyester flat webbing. I'm going to give it a cap of the 1/2 inch and then one of the 1 inch like this so that they cross. Now what I like to do here, I give both sizes a really good tug, and you might even be able to see these little horns here sort of tuck in a little bit when I do this. Just a little bit. But that basically just makes sure that everything is taut and smooth. Okay, we're finally ready to tie the knots on this. So I'm just going to take a length of paracord that is my wingspan plus the length of one arm. That generally gives me all the length that I need to tie both the heel and the accent knot. So the heel is going to be a 3-pass, 5-lead, 4-bite Turk's head. I used to do 2-pass 7/6s, but I just decided I wanted it to be simpler moving forward. Right, I'm gonna try to show this the best way that I can. You will not learn how to tie knots with this video, but you'll see my stumbling little process. So again, this is a 5-lead, 4-bite Turk's head knot. This is going to almost entirely cover the heel foundation, but I actually don't usually like the look of a knot that closes up entirely, so we will be leaving it just a little bit open. I might come through and clean parts of this up a little bit, but there you go, a finished 3-pass, 5-lead, 4-bite Turk's head. Now we are going to move on to the accent knot, which is going to be a 2-pass, 4-lead, 3-bite Turk's head. But I do usually like to do a tightening pass after I get the knot laid down. So I now have our 6-foot economy bullwhip ready to wax. I have coiled it tight enough that it will fit in the bath, and I have double checked that the seams are still straight. This is one of like 2 opportunities you have to make sure that the seams don't shift through this process. The other one will be when we bring it out and leave it to rest. So I'm just gonna fish it out, and it goes directly into my paper towel. I'm just gonna be using this to blot all the wax off the surface of it. And I'm not really wiping it. I'm not dragging the paper towel across it. I'm squeezing and releasing. Otherwise, I feel we get a lot more buildup of cold wax on the outside. But there we are, and I'll now go let this rest. The economy bullwhip is one of the least expensive models that I offer, and it's really designed to be good for performers or beginners. It's just sort of a good catch-all kind of whip that you can use for learning combination cracking, target cutting, wrapping, some tosses here and there, stuff like that. Just a good general purpose whip. So that's pretty much it. Here is the finished economy bullwhip. You can order these off of the all models page at swordguybuilds.com. Thank you all very much for watching. I appreciate you very much. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.